Welcome to Scam Squad. I'm here again with Deputy District Attorney Vicki Johnson, and we have our friends with us from Montecito Bank and Trust today, which we always enjoy. I'm going to let you introduce our guest slash sponsor slash partner, Vicki.
Yes, Patty, we're so happy to have Shawn Dyer with us today, who is the Assistant Vice President and Senior Fraud Specialist with Montecito Bank and Trust. Whoa, I had a hard time getting that out. And we're always happy to have people from the bank because we get some really valuable information. And just as a reminder, several months ago, the bank was reporting and reported to us on Scam Squad that they were getting a lot of fraudulent checks, forged checks coming into the bank. And they were able to trace that to the main post office and the big blue bin, which is in front of the main post office on Anacapa Street. Turns out there was a lot of theft happening at that particular post office, at that particular bin. So we were able to get the word out to our listeners, please don't mail your letters in that blue bin. It's not safe, because for some reason that bin was getting hit over and over, and a lot of the fraudulent checks were then cashed at Montecito Bank and Trust. So we thank you again for that alert, and hopefully it saved some people from being scammed. So what have you got for us today, Shawn?
Well, I've got a few things I thought I would touch on. One is about mailers that are actually in the mail, real mail, snail mail. Some of our tech support scams and some wires. And I'll start off with the mailers. And this came from my own mother yesterday. And I thought it was important to share because I know there's a lot of people that still get lots of snail mail and have lots of subscriptions to magazines and other things. She received this mailer and it looked like an invoice for a bill from the Mayo Clinic, as if she'd had some sort of lab test or something done. And she showed it to me. She goes, "Oh, I haven't had anything done. I don't understand what this is." Well, it's not that at all, but the way they word it in the invoice is, let me see, it's probably going to be backwards in here, but it looks like it's a bill, but it's all about a newsletter. But they're making it look like you owe them, and if you read it all, it's a subscription, but they've already got your name and address, and they have the little tear off coupon, like you're going to, send us your money. We've already renewed you. So you just have to read these things or realize, if you don't subscribe to a magazine, you don't owe the subscription, or they'll do the notice a year in advance and you'll be paid up for 5 years because you're not reading when it's actually due. So I just want to get that out there, that there are lots of old-fashioned mail fraud things out there that we just need to be reading them really carefully. And if you have a question, ask somebody else. Does this look like it's legitimate?
Because that looked very much like an invoice. Big bold letters right at the top, invoice. Mm-hmm. So in other words, you think you're paying a bill, but what you're doing is subscribing to something that you may not want at all.
Right. Yeah. And they use terms like Mayo Clinic. I mean, I immediately thought, oh, Mom, you must have had some lab test or some, your doctor must have done something related to Mayo Clinic. And that's what they're hoping. Most people will think, well, it must be an extra bill from my doctor somehow.
Right. Yeah. And we know that older folks often have a lot of doctor bills. So
exactly,
you can get confused.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, I will let the Better Business Bureau of the Tri-Counties know, because they do a podcast as well. And they have a segment here, and they actually are doing a campaign about kind of false, misleading advertising. So I think that would be a good thing for them to be aware of.
I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Patty.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, on to our next one. We kind of general categorize it under tech support scams, but it's not always like Apple or Windows, but it's along the lines where you've clicked on a link or you've had a pop-up, or there's a phone number to call to help you with something. And we have recently had a customer fall for a PayPal scam, and another one for an Amazon scam, and they're imposter scams. Obviously, it's not really PayPal, and it wasn't really Amazon. But I'll start with the Amazon. I myself received a phone message on my landline that's, oh, you've had an Amazon purchase. I think we've, Vicki, we may have talked about this kind of one before. But, you know, they're trying to get you to call back, and that there's some purchase in your basket that you probably, you know, that looks suspicious. But, you know, I don't do Amazon. We just didn't call back, just left the message on the phone. Well, these customers, the one thought she was talking to Amazon, and it just, they all turn out the same way, that the person that's helping them has convinced them to get into their online banking and to either fake transfer money into their checking account so that it looks like they just made a big deposit for, say, 50,000 and it was supposed to be 500. And now the poor person at Amazon or PayPal, they're going to lose their job if you don't go out and buy gift cards and send it right back to them or wire it back to them. So we had that situation with, and unfortunately, this is the saddest part, the customer authorized it. So we, as a bank, we can't pay them back. They did the purchase, or they did the, you know, bought the gift cards or whatever. So it's just, it's really sad situation when those happen, because they're usually in the thousands of dollars and the customer is out that money. And we know they're never, you know, no matter who you report it to, the fraudsters will not get caught because they're most likely out of the country.
And that's why they use gift cards, because once you've given them that number on the back of the gift card, that money is gone, and you will never track it, and you will never get it back. So you know, it's a very dangerous scam, because first of all, a lot of people are using Amazon these days, especially since we're all sheltered for COVID, and a lot of people use PayPal. So those are two very familiar companies to use to try and trick people. And it just happens. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up. We've talked about that before, but we can't emphasize it enough. You know, if you get hooked into something like that and somebody claims to be out that money and they're going to get in a lot of trouble, just hang up, shut down your computer, unplug your computer, do whatever you can to terminate that encounter.
Exactly. And yeah, in both of these cases, of course, it was too late. You know, it was all after the fact, and that's when the customers realized, oh, this probably isn't legitimate.
Yeah.
So then the last topic I wanted to discuss was just wires in general. Our bank, we have a software system where it analyzes a lot of our data, and when they score high enough, they kick out alerts. That's our fraud department. We review. And for our bank, we require our tellers to go through a checklist of questions when anyone is sending money out via wire. And the idea of the questions is to put question in the customer's mind. Oh, did I really verify all this information over the phone, or did I just take it when I got an email and hope that it's right? So that's always done proactively, but then the wire may still cause or score high enough where we, in the background, we think, we better look a little further at these things, ask a few more questions. So for us, when that's happening, we in the fraud department, we're going back to the branch and we're saying, hey, you know, call your customer again. We just want to go over a few points, because this wire for this dollar amount going to this beneficiary, it doesn't make sense. Like, why would, and most often it's for a business. If a business is wiring to a person, that's not normal. Businesses are usually paying vendors, another business. So that can always trigger an alert. When a consumer is paying a person, that's more common because it's a person to a person. Sure. If they're paying to a person, but the purpose of the wire is more for a business reason, that doesn't make sense. Why isn't the wire going to that business name instead of a person's name? And we just had that type of wire fraud. And we had a customer was wiring for a business purpose, but they were sending it to a person, a personal account. And we went back to the branch and we said, you know, it doesn't add up. Please go back. They went back to the customer and the customer said, oh, yeah. We've checked it out. I've had 2 people verify it. They may not have really had that happen because a week later it was fraud. And it's $40,000 and it's gone.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is to everyone listening, if your bank comes back with you with questions, we're not trying to bug you. We really think something's up. And if it's already created an alert for us to review, it's already, there's questions. So yeah, really, we're trying to protect you. We're not trying to cause you more harm and discomfort by going back and rechecking everything with whoever you've got your information from. But the fraudsters are just, and the bottom line, it was business email compromise. The company that he was sending it to, their email was compromised, intercepted, wire instructions were changed where they said, oh, yeah. And they used the name of the person they usually deal with because that's how it works. So our customer thought, oh, okay, well, you know, that person is the administrator for this business I'm sending it to, so it's must be right. And it wasn't.
Well, it's comforting to know that you are on the job and your department, your fraud department, knows all the red flags. And you know when something doesn't seem right. And you have those checklists and you are willing to call the customer again. And it's out of a desire to protect the customer. And along those lines, Shawn, we've had a very sad story come into our office about an elderly gentleman and his wife who have been caught up in the lottery scam to the tune of $200,000 already gone out the door. But this is the part that's interesting. 3 different banks have closed his account. It's the husband that's hooked up into this. So what I'm surmising is that probably 3 different banks have caught on to the fact that this is a scam, have tried to warn him. I know they've tried to warn him because eventually they reported to APS. So 3 different banks have tried to warn him, have gone through the procedures probably, I'm surmising that you're describing, and have finally decided we can no longer do this. We can no longer send out this money and help the fraudsters because we know it's a fraud. So this has happened to him 3 different times. Oh my goodness. He is still sending money and determined that he is going to be the big winner.
And that's, you're right. It's so sad. Yeah. And like, you know, it's their money and we can say all we want. And sometimes we just say, you know what, we're just refusing. But when they come back like this last one, and he said, oh no, we have double checked. I'm positive, you know, had a couple people check. We got to let it go. But like in what you're talking about, Vicki, if we had the same person doing it over and over, it's awful that our option is to close out the banking relationship when you know they're just going to find a bank that will help them. And you've like, is that the right thing to do? But what do we do? Right. And if we've reported them to APS, you know, it kind of puts you in a bind of what's the right thing. What's the responsible thing? But if they're going to keep doing it, we just don't want to be a part of it.
Exactly. And I can certainly understand that from the bank's perspective, because you know this money is going to a scammer and you don't want to be any part of that. So I guess the message for our listeners is please listen to your banker. If your banker is asking you questions, if your banker is coming back to you with additional questions, I'm sure the scammer has given you a set of responses. Here's what they want you to say. Well, don't trust the scammer, trust your banker. So that is my message for today. And I really want to thank you, Shawn, for coming on our show and giving us this very, very valuable information, and also the insight as to how the bank operates and how the bank handles these situations. It gives us a lot more confidence in what's going on with our bankers. So Thank you so much for coming on the
Yes,
show.
we really appreciate you and everyone at Montecito Bank and Trust. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. Always happy to be here.